Welcome to the Green Streets Forum, where we discuss the topics and trends focused on environmental responsibility and green awareness. We're spreading the message about sustainability with the goal of sharing this information with the diverse community we all know so that we all grow. Today, we're joined by Henry Golatt, a consultant and research collaborator whose work focuses on innovation, workforce development, and community impact through strategic partnerships. And now, let's jump into today's episode with your host, Kimberly Bullock.
Good afternoon, good evening, maybe even good morning, Green Street Forum listeners. I'm Kimberly Bullock. I am your host. And as always, I'm always happy to have you here on that Green Street. Now, this is a return from everyone that's been listening on our Cityscape series. You've learned a lot. You've grown a lot. As you know here, our motto is the more you know, the more you grow. I want to continue out this series with someone that has been a part of our journey when we were at the green table. Again, I am happy to re-welcome Mr. Henry Golatt, who is part of the HBCU Community Development Action Coalition, otherwise known as the HBCU CDAC. He has done a marvelous job. And last month, I was able to accompany him and his crew of researchers and presenters at the Cityscapes Summit at the Hyatt Regency in New Orleans, what have you. It's New Orleans to me. And I had an amazing, amazing time. So, Mr. Golatt, thank you again for joining me.
Thank you, Kim, for having me back again. And just looked like it's yesterday we were down in New Orleans. And so certainly enjoyed that time as well. So thank you for having me. Yes.
Thank you. So everyone, I have to tell you all these wonderful things about this gentleman. So correct me if I'm wrong. You stop me. I did not stalk you, but I just had to go through all of these wonderful things. So I'm going to go ahead and just sing your praises. I have to put on my glasses. I'm in Club 5 now, so I need my glasses. All right. All right. Mr. Golatt is a consultant and a research collaborator engaged in work related to innovation, workforce development, and community-focused initiatives, again, through HBCU CDAC and associated consulting activities. I'm correct, right?
That is correct.
Okay. He is involved in efforts that support collaborations between research, education, and practical community impact, particularly in advancing opportunities for underserved communities and strengthening institutional partnerships.
I couldn't have said it any better myself.
Okay. His work reflects a strong focus on translating ideas and research into real-world applications, with emphasis on building networks that connect academic, industry, and community stakeholders.
Yes. Absolutely.
Okay. And he also operates within a consulting agency through HG Consulting Services, supporting professional and strategic advisory work across related initiatives.
You did your homework, young lady. You did your
You know I did. Absolutely. Okay. And, I think the thing that makes you relate to me and why we connected, and it's been a while, is your perspective is highly relevant to conversations about equitable innovation. That word equitable, I think that's what made this such a symbiotic relationship, and your role of research in community development, workforce readiness, and how collaborative ecosystems drive meaningful social and economic outcomes. That's the secret sauce. I think that's really where we met.
I think so as well. Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
so let's get ready for these questions. You ready?
Yeah.
All right.
I'm ready.
All right, let's really focus on HBCU CDAC with this question number 1. What inspired the coalition to focus on this work based on the research? Because I read that research cover to cover. And what problem were you all trying to solve first?
Yeah, so the Clean Energy Initiative has we termed it at the time, was work that emerged out of our thinking and our proposing to really look at where opportunity might exist and could be cultivated for HBCUs, HBCU students, HBCU communities. And so, incidental to this conversation, but certainly worth noting, it must have been 2018, 2017, somewhere in that time frame. We did, what I say we, HBCU CDAC did, an Opportunities in the Innovation Economy Summit in New Orleans, of all places. And in that summit, we talked about creative placemaking, the creative economy. We talked about the innovation economy, just kind of brainstorming around what, like I said, what could possibly be a good focus. At that time, you had the gig economy coming of age. You had all of those things that were happening. I had done quite a bit of work at Arkansas Pine Bluff on the creative economy as a discipline, and so we did the summit. We invited HBCUs from everywhere, just as we always do. But in addition to the HBCUs, we also had presenting, and at that conference, the Department of Energy and others. And it was out of that conversation with the Department of Energy, who was at the same time looking at, of course, doing a lot of things with solar. You have to think about back at that time frame. This was coming to the end of the Obama administration, and all of the things that had happened through his presidency, one of which was in your fair city of Baltimore with the Freddie Gray kind of situation that unfolded. And at that time, Morgan State and others, along with HBCU CDAC, was looking at, the green economy, innovation, and things of that nature. So we took off from there, formulated a relationship with the Department of Energy. I developed a white paper at that time that talked about how this work could be advanced through HBCUs. It led to us signing a MO. I won't say it on its own, but all of the things combined. The fact that DOE was at that session with us and wanted to hear more about what we were doing and how we were doing it. It went on to end with us formulating a formal agreement, a memorandum of agreement with the Department of Energy, which really catapulted the HBCU clean energy work and pushed it forward. At the same time, they were doing a similar type of initiative with cybersecurity and things of that nature. So our work was formulated out of that convening, out of that conversation with DOE, out of that MOU, MOA, and we had certain things we were going to do, and that was to spread awareness about energy and energy-related outcomes in under-resourced community, realizing that that was a growth sector, that was something that not only we were looking at, but globally, that was something that was coming of age. And so being at the right place at the right time, talking about the right things with the right people, always it's what's important to us. And so we've been at this for since then in terms of laying the groundwork. We've done not only research kind of agenda, but we've also done place-based deployments. We've found funding, foundation funding, and otherwise to put install rooftop solar on homes in North Carolina at no cost to homeowners. And I think you were a part of that conversation when we talked before. At least you were aware of it. But the long and short of it is that's been what we were doing. Because I'm strategic in how I try to approach it. Matter of fact, my work with CDAC has by and large been setting the agenda, being very forward-looking in terms of directing us in a direction that was, could be nurtured and matured and could be collaborative in that way. We developed this research agenda that included more than just the energy sector, but certainly using energy as a driver. And giving what we needed it to be in terms of helping our communities and, providing opportunities for small business development. Just a whole lot of things could come out of it. But yeah, that whole research agenda is kind of how we formulated that and began that work, just having a very specific research agenda that could inform the work on the ground. And the same thing for business development, any other aspect of what we were doing. But basically, and using that research agenda to not only inform us of what needs to be done, but also being able to use that as case studies and things of that nature to share out the good outcomes that do derive out of the work.
Okay, I'm going to say that's a really good segue into the second question, especially when you talked about the rooftop solar, and you mentioned that you put that, you were doing that for some of the homes in communities. Because the second question that I have is, when people hear energy equity, what do you want everyday communities to understand through your work, through what you're doing? What do you want everyday communities to understand when you say energy equity? Which is the bulk of my audience? What do you want them to understand?
Very good question. Let me just start by saying, when you think about agencies like the Department of Energy, or for some people, any federal agency is daunting to think about. How does that work for me? How do I do that? And so, with regards to energy equity, the sun is everywhere. I think that was one of President Obama's favorite sayings. He would talk about it when he was mentioning the clean energy industry or the green industry. The sun is everywhere, and so you already have that as an asset in every community. Okay, so but beyond that, we like to think about equity in the energy space as being something that drives outcomes for everyone. And so whether you're an installer, doing solar installations, or you own a solar company, or whether you're doing some other type of clean energy, sustainable energy, even if you're not doing those things, you're participating in the energy economy. Okay, and so for us, equity deals with how I use it, how it benefits me, and how it be positioned for my community and for my family going forward. And so,
Absolutely.
about the rooftop solar. I mean, those individuals, given the life cycle of those panels and things of that nature, which still got at least a little bit more time on it. Usually, you got a 15-year life cycle on those panels when you put them on a home. Well, those at no cost to them because we were able to underwrite that with grant funding, foundation funding. But the bill, if you talk with anyone who has solar, they'll tell you that they went from maybe $100, $80 a month to $15 a month, or something like that. So that's equity. That's equity right there. So that savings, those savings, I should say, then able to be redeployed into a household to create additional opportunities that might not otherwise exist. So that's equity. That's equity in practice.
I agree. I absolutely agree. So, circling back to HBCU CDAC, where do you see, what is the ultimate goal of success for your coalition? When you see them what's the ultimate goal of success? To say, job well done, we've done this.
Yeah. It's interesting because, just a little backstory of how we ended up with the coalition. The coalition was started out of a need. Okay, so I was at Arkansas Pine Bluff, which is right over my shoulder here in terms of my pendant. I share it proudly because I want people to see and recognize these lesser known HBCUs that are doing good.
That's right.
And so long and short of it is around the financial, the Great Recession, the Great, whatever you want to call it, in '08. My colleagues and I were all at HBCUs. I spent about 25 years at the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff doing this kind of work on behalf of the university. And we all had really become accustomed to a certain level of funding from HUD and other other agencies within the federal government. It is how I built buildings, and they did as well at our campuses. Well, in '08, with the financial meltdown, a lot of that was put on hold. And so we formulated this organization was really built out of a call to action. whereby we were petitioning the government and the administration at that time to say, hey, look, we need these funds to stay because this is how we are bringing, change for our communities and building things that otherwise wouldn't be built. And so out of that, we formulated this organization. And of course, all these years later, we've been constantly building and brick on brick and moving it forward. But to your question, in and around about that same time, 2022, 2023, somewhere in that time frame, as my role with HBCU CDAC is around building strategies and strong partnerships. And so we went through a planning and strategic planning process with the board and with partners and people of that nature. And so out of that, I formulated with input from the community of partners, if you will, this strategy for, the next 4 or 5 years worth of work. And so I'm going to read to you that strategic objective at the time. And it simply says, by the end of 2026, CDAC would be positioned as a top-tier, nationally recognized community economic development organization and recognized as a national leader in transforming college campuses and their surrounding communities through the deployment of place-based research, strategies, and initiatives. And so I will put the mirror back or turn the table a little bit and ask you, after hearing that, do you feel like that we have accomplished the goal that we were moving toward?
Well, let me see. I would think a month ago in the state of Louisiana, I would say the answer is the affirmative. You proved that to be the case.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah.
And what is not shown in that, I don't know whether you were able to sit in on the session that I did. I did 2 sessions at Cityscape. One was, of course, the energy session, but I also did one session on anchor institutions, HBCUs as anchor institutions, that I talked about the work in Pine Bluff, but also talked about the work in Orangeburg, South Carolina, where
I wasn't in that one.
CDAC partnered with a Black developer out of Virginia, and we are very close to the grand opening of about a 6-story mixed-use development there that benefits both Claflin and South Carolina State. It's called the Railroad Corner Project, which is, again, much needed in that small town, but it's a huge development, student housing and office space and things of that nature. But it sits right across the street from. So in both regards, that kind of work has been advanced.
Okay, so I would say we've met that, and yes, I guess, yeah. Okay, so question number 4. What are some real opportunities you see emerging for underserved communities in this space? And I know we had talked about some of the big rocks with, I guess we had talked about in the research world with energy equity was, I think, it was mentorships and research funding. Those were some things that we had talked about in the studies and the research. But I think my question is kind of generalized and not as nuanced, but because my audience is not really in the world of academia so much. So my question is a little bit more generalized, but you can kind of wordsmith or, answer the question, how you choose. But the question is, what are some real opportunities you see emerging for the underserved communities in this space? And that has to do with energy equity.
Yeah. So for us, research is never just the end all be all, as you gave the lead into who I am and what I've done over the years. I take research and then I make it into, the goal is to either inform the work or report out the work in a meaningful way. And so, mentorship is certainly part of it. But what we see in the research agenda is we are allowing our, for too long, we have been studied by other entities, other organizations, other ethnicities for that matter. And in this day and time, in this current climate, we need to generate our own research. Okay, we need to be responsible for that. We see also an opportunity for HBCUs to own a greater slice of that pie around energy-related research, energy-related mentorship, and things of that nature. So for me, what I would like to see happening in our communities is more participatory research. Just because you're not an academician doesn't mean that you don't have a voice, and that the we're talking about or the policies that are being developed based upon what we're talking about, that you don't have a reason to be involved and engaged and aware and participating in that, which is why we formulated the energy session at Cityscape like we did. You'll notice you had all stripes of people in that room. You had folks, academicians. You had people who were, you and my wife fit in this same category. You both, at the secondary level in terms of education. You teach public school, you teach, whatever. And so the point is, you wanted to have diversity there, and so that diversity informs policy and outcomes. And so those are things, in addition to just, small business development, all of these are things that benefit our community. And whenever we can bring down the cost of just being on this planet, whether it's from a household or from an individual perspective, we can bring down that cost of living, that cost of, just like I said, just living life, then you're going to make it's just going to make a better community, because every time you do that, now you've got disposable income to now think about, that building has been empty for a while and nobody seems to take an interest in it, but this is my community. Maybe I can start a neighborhood groceries, something of that nature that's going to bring value to a community. So this stuff is interconnected. It's not isolated. It is all interconnected. Yes.
Mm-hmm. I agree. So I think you kind of answered this question. This is kind of redundant, but I'm going to say it anyway. How are you helping translate research and ideas into real opportunities for communities? I think you just answered that.
A little bit. I will add to that is that, we are also doing, of course, being on forums like the Green Street Forum. All of this helps. Because people can't react to something they know nothing of. And for our communities, we have to really be intentional about getting the word out. And we have to use multiple vehicles to do so. And as we continue to see AI develop and things of that nature, we have to use those and deploy those to the fullest extent possible, because we don't know where people are going to come from. We don't know where they're going to listen. We don't know whether they're going to listen to your podcast or they're going to show up at Cityscape. So we have to be very intentional about getting the word out. Once you get the word out, then we've got to be able to put people, almost plant people and inform people and, mentor people even in that regard, so that once information is there, you have someone helping you to dissect it and understand how best to utilize it. And so all of these are things that we all have a role to play in making sure that those things happen. So that's the added piece of that. And again, I can't say enough about where we are going and how things are playing out. Even at HBCUs and what you see happening from an educational perspective, a lot of this conversation now is moving toward, for HBCUs, is kind of going back in time a little bit, because a lot of them are being asked at the state level to consider a polytechnical role, and so they're moving away some, or at least trying to incentivize more workforce development kinds of things, even at the 4-year level. And so again, that's workforce development is sometimes I can get on a tangent about what that actually ends up meaning and for whom does that mean that for. But there can be some great things that can come out of that, and we are focused on that as well. How do we bring jobs? How do we bring innovation? More importantly, how do we create entrepreneurs in these various spaces based upon sound research and market-based practices.
I do know for a fact, I mean, you know that I'm a graduate of Coppin State. They are doing that. I know there's a lot going on now with Coppin with that because I know a couple of my sorors, and you see the pink and green, of course, I'm representing.
Yes.
They were saying that at the gala, the current president was mentioning that when he was talking about that. And I live in Prince George's County now, and Bowie State University has that whole entrepreneurship center there. So that does mirror what you were saying. And again, the questions just seem to just lend themselves into the next question, because the next question is, what kinds of partnerships are most valuable to your coalition right now?
Yeah. We're always in search of these public-private, what we call public-private partnerships, and so, I would rate that as very high on the list, just because, again, we want to grow in this. Again, I go back and lay the ground and say we're in strange times in terms of our political climate. We're in strange times in terms of what seems to be the conscience of the nation at this point in time. And I will say, as my mother, father, grandmother would say, coming up in a Baptist church, that trouble don't last always. And so we've got to prepare ourselves for what comes next, okay? And again, the darkest hour is just before dawn every day, okay? So that's science in and of itself. And so what we've got to do is find partners who are willing to, not only come alongside, individuals like myself, organizations like CDAC, but HBCUs, community-based organizations, and the like. And we need to be very intent on building what we want and desire and need in our communities. And we know we can't do that by ourselves. And so that's why I say strong partnerships, effective partnerships are what we need more than anything else. We've got research, we got tons of that somewhere. Let's not repeat what has already been studied. What's understood need not be said. And so we need to be about the business of how do we create action plans, how do we create partnerships, strong partnerships that last and are mutually beneficial. Partnership is not a partnership if only you benefiting. That's not a partnership. That's something other than I got some words for it, but we won't say those on your show. I tell people the partnership, the root word of partnership is part. If I'm not a part of it, then it's not a partnership.
Absolutely. And I would like to close this out by asking if someone listening wants to support or collaborate with HBCU CDAC, what's the best way for them to get involved?
Actually, yes, no doubt. HBCU Community Development Action Coalition is available on the web. In the website, I'll leave it to you and the engineer to post the address, but it is available there on the web. There is a call to action right there on that website. It says that if you find yourself here, you're here for a purpose, and there's a donate button there on the website there. So that would be the best way. If you want to reach out to me directly, the best way for me is always on LinkedIn. I'm always posting and sharing. Again, Henry Golatt, and you'll see me there. You won't be able to miss me once you key that in. I do have a son, and he's a lot better looking than I am and a lot younger. So make sure you get the older guy when you look for me on LinkedIn.
And he will get back to you, trust me. He is very, very quick to respond. So please, he's good with that. I love that. Very, very, very early responsive. So that's a good thing. I just can't say enough. This has been very insightful and enlightening and very, very refreshing. And, proof positive that I'm glad that we've made this connection and have continued to grow in this connection. And I think my listeners have learned a lot. And I am certain that you will get a lot of listeners that want to learn more and grow more, as is part of our motto. And we're going to certainly continue to promote this. And I appreciate you spending time with us today.
I appreciate you, Kim. If I can use this to say as well, for those listening, Kim has been a bulwark in this work, really lifting up not only organizations like HBCU CDAC, but also I've subscribed to the channel. So if you're not subscribing to the channel, do so now. It's a little link there that allows you to go ahead and check that box. But in addition to that, she's just been really stand up in terms of my working with you, Kim. And so thank you so much for what you do. Thank you, husband, for allowing you to go on these junkets from time to time and find people like me and do the things that we do. So
look, anytime he can get hold of the remotes and all that stuff and get time to relax on the deck and eat crabs and all of that and not have to hear me, it's fine. He enjoyed it. It was okay. And that was my first time going to New Orleans, so it was fun. I definitely enjoyed it. So thank you so much. Well appreciated. Take care.
appreciate you.
This episode of the Green Streets Forum is powered by USB Solar Solutions, distributor of SunSign, solar-powered signage lighting the way to a cleaner and brighter future. In collaboration with HBCU CDAC, Community Development Action Coalition, and NGIN, New Growth Innovation Network, organizations dedicated to advancing innovation, workforce development, and community impact. If you enjoyed today's conversation, visit usbsolars.com to learn more. Let's keep pushing forward and power the future of clean energy, one sun sign at a time. Until next time, stay inspired and stay green.